Ja, schönen guten Morgen alle zusammen. Schön euch alle hier zu sehen und ja, es war für uns eine sehr besondere Woche, denn wir waren in Budapest gewesen zu unserer christlichen Konferenz von Greater Grace und die war sehr powervoll, sehr lebendig. Wir haben gesehen, wie Gott wirkt, wie viele Menschen für uns als Gemeinde eben halt auch beten. Und ja, auch wie eben halt überall in den Gemeinden auch Veränderungen sind. Aber Gott ist eben halt stark und er ist eben halt lebendig. Und dafür können wir sehr dankbar sein. Und ja, das war eben halt eine sehr wunderschöne Zeit gewesen, wo wirklich Gott da gewesen ist, wo man Gemeinschaft gehabt hat. Wir haben eben Austausch gehabt und eben halt Ermutigung. Und ich kann jedem immer wieder nur empfehlen, dorthin zu kommen und zu sehen, wie Gott auch wirklich wirkt. Man sieht, es war ja nur ein Bruchteil von dem, was der Menschen dort ist. Es war ja eine Vertretung von vielen Gemeinden aus der ganzen Welt. Ne? Aus Peru waren eben halt Leute da gewesen, aus Amerika, aus China, ja, also die ganzen europäischen Länder waren vertreten. Wer noch? Also helf mir mal.
Woher kamen die Leute, meinst du?
Ja,
You said Peru.
Genau, Finnland.
Aus Europa, Finnland, Austria.
Australien, genau.
Australien war auch,
Schweiz.
Schweiz.
Ja, also.
Aserbaidschan.
Genau, aus Aserbaidschan. Ja, natürlich unsere geliebten Brüder und Schwestern. Eise kommt aus Aserbaidschan.
Polen, Amerika.
Genau, und ja, das war schön zu sehen einfach und Gemeinschaft zu haben. Wir haben eben halt viel Zeit verbracht und das war eben halt sehr lebendig und ja, wir haben eben halt auch viel darüber gesprochen und Pastor Schaller, das ist ja unser Hauptpastor eben halt aus Baltimore, dass wir eben halt ein festes Fundament haben. Er ist gebaut eben halt auf den Felsen. Ne? Und wir bauen unsere Gemeinde und in Matthäus 16 steht es eben halt, das kann ich noch kurz lesen. Und zwar heißt es in Matthäus 16, ich nehme mal nicht auf, im Vers 18, und ich sage dir auch, du bist Petrus und auf diesen Felsen wird meine Gemeinde gebaut. Und die Pforte der Hölle soll sie nicht überwältigen. Und es ist eben halt wunderschön zu wissen, dass keiner diese Gemeinde eben halt angreifen kann. Sicherlich kann er uns als Person vielleicht angreifen, aber diese Gemeinde steht fest und Jesus Christus hat diese Gemeinde gebaut und wir können sehr dankbar dafür sein. Und wir werden ihn dafür auch loben und preisen. Das wollen wir heute Morgen auch wieder tun über unsere Karaoke, dass wir zu ihm singen. Und ja, ich will noch kurz zum Anfang beten. Ja, danke, himmlischer Vater, dass du für uns bist. Danke, dass du deinen geliebten Sohn zu uns gesandt hast, Herr, dass wir dadurch auch eine lebendige Verbindung haben mit dir, Herr. Ja, er ist gekommen auf diese Welt, er hat gedient, er hat gezeigt, wie groß deine Liebe ist, Herr. Und wir danken dir dafür, Herr, dass diese Liebe unendlich gibst, Herr, endlich ist und dass du uns geistliche Nahrung gibst, Herr. Wir sind gebaut, ja, wir sind verbunden mit dir im Himmelreich, Herr. Ja, du führst und leitest uns, Herr, und wir danken dir dafür, Herr. Wir wollen heute Morgen zu dir singen, wir wollen auf dich schauen, Herr, wollen dich verherrlichen, Herr, denn es ist heute Sonntag, es ist dein Tag, Herr. Dir gebührt die Ehre an diesem Tag, Herr, und wir danken dir, Herr, für all die Dinge, die du gegeben hast, die du noch geben wirst, Herr, und für diese ewige Hoffnung, die du uns gibst, Herr. Danke, Herr, danke, Herr. Und ja, ich möchte auch beten, Herr, für unsere Brüder und Schwestern, die vielleicht krank sind, Herr, und auch für Menschen, die Hoffnung brauchen, Herr. Ich möchte dich beten auch für Pastor Dragan, Herr, der seinen Vater verloren hat, Herr. Ja, erneuer du ihn, Herr, gib du ihm Kraft und Halt, Herr. Tröste du ihn, wenn er traurig ist, Herr. Du weißt genau, was er bedarf, Herr. Und hab Dank für jeden Bruder, für jede Schwester, Herr, in unserem Leib. Ja, es ist so kostbar, Herr, diesen Leib zu haben und mit ihm zu sein und zu sehen, wie du wirkst, Herr. Danke, Herr. Danke, Herr. In Jesu Namen beten wir. Amen. Okay, lasst uns aufstehen und unseren Herrn preisen. Okay, das erste Lied ist das deutsches Lied, was wir singen. Und zwar Heilig bist du, Herr.
Heilig bist du, Herr.
bist heilig, heilig bist du, Herr, Herr. Dir gebührt die Ehre, Herr. Wir schauen nur auf dich, Herr, heute, Herr. Denn du bist unser Gott und du regierst in dieser Herrlichkeit. Du bist heilig, Herr. Danke, Herr. Danke, o himmlischer Vater, für deinen geliebten Sohn, Herr, dass er gekommen ist, Herr, und dass er die Liebe offenbart hat, Herr, ja, die du hast für uns, Herr. Danke, Herr, für das verbrachte Werk, Herr, am Kreuz, Herr. Danke, Herr, dass wir angenommen sind, Herr. Danke, Herr, Stärke und Kraft und Ermutigung gibst immer wieder neu, Herr. Danke, dass wir unseren Felsen auf dir bauen, Herr. Danke, dass du uns diese Gemeinde gibst, Herr, diesen Leib, Herr. Ja. Wer kann gegen uns sein, Herr, wenn du für uns bist, Herr? Du bist stärker als alles andere, Herr. Du hast die Welt erschaffen, Herr. Überall bist du, Herr. In jedem Stein, in jeder Pflanze, in jedem Tier, Herr. In uns Menschen, Herr, wohnst du, Herr. Danke, Herr, dass du für uns bist. Danke, dass wir vollkommen sind in dir, Herr. Nicht selber, dass wir aus eigenen Werken, Herr, vollkommen sind, sondern dass du uns vollkommen machst. In deiner unendlichen Liebe, Herr. Danke, Herr. Danke, Herr. Ja, danke Herr, dass du für uns bist, danke, dass du mit uns bist, Herr, und ja, wir kommen heute Morgen zu dir, Herr, wir bitten dich für diesen Gottesdienst, dass du ihn segnest, dass du jeden Einzelnen von uns segnest, dass du zu uns sprichst, dass du uns erquickst, Herr, dass du, wenn wir entmutigt sind, Herr, dass du uns ermutigst, Herr, dass du für uns bist und danke, dass du lebendig bist, Herr. Ja, fülle du unsere Herzen, Herr, mit deiner Liebe, Herr. Herr, salbe das Wort, Herr, das wir gleich hören werden, Herr. Wir danken dir, Herr, dass du für uns bist und dass wir vollkommen sind in dir, Herr. Danke, Herr. Danke, Herr. In Jesu Namen beten wir. Amen. Amen. Okay. Jetzt danke. Wasser vor dir.
Thank you. I was going to ask if that was for me. Mätthäus, Kapitel 9.
Ja, okay.
Matthew 9.
Yeah, I can read also.
This will be a little shorter than my normal messages.
Okay.
Bisschen kürzer.
Yeah.
I am fascinated by how the different disciples were chosen by Jesus. Do you want to translate for her? Or she gonna...
I cannot understand all.
Ah, okay.
I understand what I understand.
Okay, that's okay. That's all right. I understand. But we're talking about the 12 that were chosen by Jesus.
This is 12
Schüler.
Schüler, genau. Das Schüler von Jesus lesen.
And when you look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all 4 of the gospel writers talk about the different disciples that followed Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, when I was younger as a Christian, I thought that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were all apostles. Were all part of the 12. But that's not true. Only Matthew and John are apostles. Mark was very young, and Luke was someone that we met later in church history. And we could do a study on the 12 and their personalities and compare them how they are like us as people. What's interesting is if you study the New Testament and watch how their lives develop, we learn a lot about all 12 men. The person we know the least about is the 13th apostle, Matthias, who was chosen after Judas betrayed Jesus. Matthias, he was the disciple after Judas Iscariot.
Matthias ist der Nachfolger nach Judas. Judas ist ja
Betrayer.
Und genau, er ist halt, ja.
And we know nothing about Matthias except his name.
Yes.
Most people are probably very familiar with Matthew and John. They're very popular books in the New Testament, and they are common names in the world's culture. In fact, outside of China, John is probably one of the most common names used throughout the world in different forms. But I like to look at each person and see how they came to follow Jesus and to see what I can learn from their personality. And if you look at the text, each time we learn about how one of the 12 was picked, they all have their different unique stories. When we look at all the 12 and how they were selected, they each have a very unique, different story. And this morning we're going to talk about Matthew. Or as Luke and Mark call him, Levi. Levi is his other name. Matthew and Levi is his other name. And we could spend the whole time talking about why so many of our people that we see in the New Testament have more than one name. That's a whole interesting study. The name Matthew means gift of God. The name Levi means companion or friend. Companion, colleague. Yeah, colleague. Okay. Now we know that Matthew was a tax collector. Not exactly a popular job during this time in the Roman Empire. The Jews hated the tax collectors. Steuerberater, yeah. And they hated them because they were often they stole. They would charge the taxes that Rome gave, but Rome only. Okay, I'll give you an example. Rome would say, okay, for every citizen in this city, and Matthew is from Capernaum, which is on the Sea of Galilee. Okay, you can imagine the Sea of Galilee is right here. This is the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, okay, Mediterranean, okay, the Mätthäus. So this is the Sea of Galilee, and Capernaum is on the top. It is the city where Jesus went more than any other city during his ministry. And most of the disciples are from that region. And the region is called Galilee. Okay? So Capernaum was Matthew's hometown. And he would sit in an office and he would collect taxes from boats that would travel back and forth in the water of the Sea of Galilee. So we can probably safely assume or know that most of the 12 knew about Matthew because they were traveling in that region. And they probably didn't like him. So, especially Simon. I would say that Simon Peter probably had the hardest problem with Matthew. That's a whole nother. Thinking about the personalities of the 12 with each other. You know, we have James and John, brothers. Simon and Andrew, brothers. Bartholomew and Thaddeus, or Nathaniel, best friends. Philip and Bartholomew, best friends. And then Nathaniel, or Thaddeus, as he's known both ways, was a very close friend of Philip. So all these people have relationships. But Matthew didn't have any. And part of that probably comes from the fact that he was a tax collector and people didn't like him. So in verse number 9, chapter 9, verse 9, read verse 9, Vers 9 bitte.
Und als Jesus von dort wegging, sah einen Menschen am Zoll sitzen, der hieß Matthäus, und sprach zu ihm, folge mir. Und stand auf und folgte ihm.
Okay, good. It's amazing to me how, when he called these men, there was no question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay. I mean, think about that. Think about that, what that's like.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Okay, when I think of myself as a 16-year-old boy, and if a girl that I thought was pretty, if she said, come follow me, yeah, I would probably go right now, okay? But now, I'm 61 years old. It takes a lot for someone to say, come, and I'm gonna go, okay, I may have to think about it. And if I don't feel like physically getting up, I'm not gonna get up. But we see this on more than one occasion. Let's don't make the mistake of thinking, though, that Matthew did not know about Jesus. One, being a tax collector, he was very familiar with the Roman culture, and because he was in Capernaum, he knew all the people that traveled in the region. So we know that he heard about Jesus. This was not just some, oh hey, here's a new guy, I'll follow him. That's not what happened. Again, my struggle here is that I kind of want to spend a lot of time on each of the 12 and how they interact with each other. But I want to use Matthew as an example because the way that he followed Jesus and the thing that he did right after. So when Jesus called him and Matthew gets up, remember, Jesus is walking, okay? He's walking in the neighborhood. And he sees Matthew at his tax table, okay? There's for us to know the mind of God is impossible. But why Matthew? These questions only make sense when we take all 12 and put them all together in the kind of people they were and the personalities. They were all 12 very different men. And Matthew was the kind of a person that Jesus needed because of his unique talents as a tax collector. Yes, it takes talent to be a tax collector. And his understanding, Levi had to understand Jewish culture and Roman culture. He had to understand both. That Jewish culture and Roman culture. He had to understand both because it was his job. So Jesus knew. Remember, all 12 were Jews. We know that. But they didn't all have the same understanding of what was going on in Rome. That's why I find it interesting that, well, I won't even go ahead. Yeah, it's so easy to get distracted because there's so many great stories here. Okay, so a comment on what it means to follow. Okay, we understand what that means, right? If I say, follow me. Okay, so a person walks and you follow behind them. All right. I always love watching little boys and their fathers. I've actually seen this with Mani and Sven, where the father will be walking, not really knowing what the son is doing, but the son will be looking like this, following that. Okay? It's a wonderful picture. So the Greek word is called akalutheo, but it's not important. The Greek word is, but I'll tell you what it means. It has two meanings. The first meaning is following behind somebody. Okay? The second meaning is having the same way of thought, having the same mindset. Okay? In other words, Terry and I agree on things with our minds. And so she follows me, and I follow her in the way we think about certain things in the world, how we see the world. Okay? So that's also what it means to be a follower. Now, what's interesting about the 12? We know, as we read throughout the Gospels, and then those who lived past that time that we read in the letters of Paul and Peter and everybody, we know that they all had to change what they thought. You know, they did not all begin understanding, because Jesus said this many times, they don't understand. They did not begin understanding everything at the beginning. They didn't know everything at the beginning. They had to learn. Peter, of course, we've talked about Peter many times here, haven't we? How many times how many problems he made, mistakes he made in order for us to learn from him. And so we watched their journey and how all of them, except one, all of them changed their minds. Okay? They all wanted to follow him. That never changed. But how they saw him, that's what changed. And Judas did not change his. Judas was so disappointed that he didn't change his mind. Okay? And but it's really very interesting to watch how they develop this. One other thing I like about the response of Matthew, it was immediate. When you know something to be true, or something to be right, or just, your response should be right then. Yes, this is right. Yes, I believe this. Yes, I agree. We should never wait to confirm something as being true. I get so tired of what you see in the culture today. How something will be said, okay, this is true, but they have to have a big discussion about it. And they have to have a big argument about it. And they say, well, maybe it's true to you, but it's not true for me. No. It's either true or it's not true. Jesus is either, and we've said this before, Jesus is either the Jesus the Bible says he is, the Son of God, the Savior of the world, or he's a completely useless individual. Okay? You cannot just be a good teacher and say what he said about himself. But that's a whole other story. I don't want to get distracted. Matthew, after Matthew's call, the first thing he does is throw a party. Okay? Matthew, throws this big party for the people in the city. And this is important because we see all kinds of people coming to that house. And people who would associate with a Jewish tax collector, although they wouldn't even look at him as a Jew because he was a tax collector. So we could assume there were prostitutes, there were thieves, there were rich people, there were stubborn people, there were obnoxious people, there were Romans, many people, all of whom, and Gentiles, okay? All of whom the Jewish leaders would say, no, we're not going anywhere near them, okay? In fact, in verse 10, we see a reaction, okay? Oh, sorry, verse 10 is a celebration. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm trying to make this a little shorter because of time. So Matthew wanted people to know that a person like him, a lowly tax collector who nobody liked, Jesus wanted him. And that's a message of hope for us. If Jesus wanted Matthew, then he would want us. Just like Peter. If Jesus would want Peter, someone who makes so many mistakes, he would also want us. That should be an encouragement. Verse 10. Please read verse 10. Sven.
Ja, so.
That's verse 10. Say it.
Okay.
Welche nochmal?
Chapter 9, verse 10. Vers 10.
Und es begab sich, als er zu Tisch saß im Hause, siehe da, kamen viele Zöllner und Sünder und saßen zu Tische mit Jesus und seinen Jüngern.
Yep, so we see this. Many sinners, okay? And, okay, chapter 9, verse 10. And so This is important because Matthew opens up his home. He's so happy. He wants everyone to know. He's so happy. And these people are all the different kinds of people in Capernaum. But the only people who didn't come to his house were the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees. You see, to them, all these people that in Matthew's house were sinners. And Matthew just wanted to throw a party. Now we read verse 11.
Okay.
11.
Als das die Pharisäer sahen, sprachen sie zu seinen Jüngern: Warum ist euer Meister mit den Zöllnern und den Sündern?
Something good happens and someone has to complain about it. There are people like that in the world. They just have nothing but negative things to say. It doesn't matter what they see. And we have this saying, and I know the saying is in German. I don't know the certain saying in German, but I know most cultures have this saying. You can see a glass as half empty or half full. Okay? You're either optimistic or pessimistic. You either see good or you see bad. And the Pharisees always saw bad. Always. And Jesus had no time for them. He just didn't. They waited outside Matthew's house so that when the party was over, they would start causing trouble. And they would ask the disciples, why were you in there with those Gentiles? Why did you do this? And they were ready for this big trap. But nobody cared because Jesus had changed this man's life. Okay? The Jewish leaders expected a Messiah who would crush, who would destroy sinners, who would destroy Rome and support the righteous Pharisees. Okay? I'm a Pharisee. I am righteous. Instead, Christ transforms the sinner and he dismisses the righteous as hypocrites. This is what we see in verse 12 and 13. So, 12 and 13.
Als Jesus hörte, sprach die Starken bedürfen nicht des Arztes, sondern die Kranken. Geht aber hin und lernt, was das heißt. Ich habe Wohlgefallen an Barmherzigkeit und nicht an Opfer. Ich bin gekommen, die Sünder zu rufen und nicht die Gerechten.
This is a really important text. Yeah, sure.
Aber hier liest man, dass als das Jesus hörte, sagte zu ihnen, die Starken brauchen einen Arzt, sondern die Kranken.
Very important. Jesus heard these Pharisees, and knowing Jesus, thinking about how Jesus would react, he's probably like, oh. And he says, I did not come to heal those who are well, I came to heal those who are sick. And in order to heal someone, this is important, in order to heal somebody who is sick, in order to make somebody well, if you are a doctor, you have to actually touch them and be with them and talk to them. You can't just sit back and go, okay, I think your problem, okay, and that's not how it works. It's important that Jesus is saying, what is wrong with you? These people need to be healed. I am going to heal them. I am going to touch them. You could do so much here. I have to be careful. The Pharisees did not understand that they also needed a doctor. They also needed the doctor. Jesus, when he used the word go and learn, when he tells the Pharisees, go and learn, that was what is considered an intellectual insult. Okay? It's like he was saying, you think you learn, you think you know everything? You don't know anything. Go and learn. In other words, begin your learning. Think about that. He's saying, begin your learning because you don't know anything. You think you know everything. You know nothing. The Pharisees missed the point. They followed their rituals and the rules of their fathers, and they felt that's what saved them. We can make that mistake too. We put too much faith in a ideology, in a political system, in a philosophy, and we have to be very careful because God is saying, no, you follow me, you follow Jesus first. The idea here was mercy, and Jesus spent a lot of time showing mercy to people. The Pharisees never, ever understood that concept. Matthew, when you read all of Matthew, you see his words sound like somebody who is grateful. It sounds like somebody who is thankful that Jesus saw in him a sinner worth value. Okay? Matthew shares his conversion story to prove that Christ came to do two things: to seek and save the lost, and to tear down the walls between God and man. That's what Jesus came to do. And Matthew knew that sinners needed to be where the doctor was. And I am thankful that Matthew invited friends to this dinner. Some people believe, now I cannot say this is completely true. I believe this. Many scholars, people study the Bible, think that Mary Magdalene was at this party. They think that this is how she became acquainted with Jesus. We don't know, but it's possible. Okay? Because in one of the texts, it talks about at the house of Levi, Mary had anointed her Jesus' feet. The tears. We don't know if it's the exact same Levi, but it's very possible. So, what's the point of all this? When we choose to follow Christ, one of our responses is to show mercy to others. Because when we are grateful for God showing mercy to us, then it is easier for us to show mercy to others. We cannot create a castle, a fortress around the church, and look out through the windows and say, oh, you poor people, we're safe here inside, but you poor people out there, I don't know if we can help you. That's not the church. The church is a fortress. The church building is not a fortress. When we are sitting here together worshiping and thinking about what God did through Matthew, then we must go out and do the same thing to others. If Jesus can use a lowly tax collector, then he can use a loud, outgoing, silly American like me. He can use all of us. The cost of the discipleship, the cost of being a disciple of Jesus is everything. But when we look at how each of the 12, and again, we could spend so much time just looking at how each of them responded and how they lived their lives, it should give us hope that anyone in this room and anyone that we know can be a follower of Jesus. And it doesn't take anything special except to answer these words. Follow me. Okay, I'll follow you. It's that simple. I could say more, but I just want to encourage everyone to remember why they chose to follow Jesus in the first place, and then how do we help others follow Jesus.
Thank you. Ja, vielen Dank, Terry. Es war sehr ermutigend, auch darüber nachzudenken, dass ja, dass es so einfach sein kann, Jesus nachzufolgen. Und ich werde nächste Woche, denke ich, werde ich eben halt über unser Herz eben halt sprechen. Und viele von uns hatten ein gebrochenes Herz und ich will eben halt auch Leute da ermutigen, eben halt daran auch zu arbeiten, an ihrem Herz. Und das ist sehr wichtig, finde ich, in unserem Leben. Und ich hatte letzte Woche eben halt, Entschuldigung, vor 2 Wochen, letzte Woche waren wir in Wien gewesen, da habe ich zwar auch gepredigt, aber über was anderes, habe ich über diesen Baum gepredigt. Und ja, das ist eben halt unser christliches Leben, was wir eben halt haben. Das symbolisiert dieser Baum und wir dürfen eben halt immer nicht vergessen, was ich eben halt sehr großen Wert drauf lege, dass wir eben halt geistliche Nahrung haben, dass wir jederzeit auf diese Nahrung zugreifen können. Die ist unendlich. Und diese Nahrung beziehen wir uns aus dem Himmelreich. Ne? Und all diese Dinge, die wir tun, Bibel lesen, Gebet haben, Gemeinschaft haben, da ist unwahrscheinlich viel Nahrung und wir können davon eben halt empfangen und wir können unser Herz damit eben halt füllen. Und ja, lasst uns gewiss auf Gott vertrauen und ihm dafür auch immer wieder preisen und dankbar sein, dass er Dinge tut und uns verändert, wie eben halt bei Matthäus im Leben, dass er diesen Mann berufen hat, der nicht beliebt war, sondern dass er wirklich auf Jesus geschaut hat und ihm nachgefolgt hat. Okay, wir wollen noch zum Schluss ein Lied singen und dann wollen wir abschließen.
Nicht mit deinem Blut.
Würdig ist das Lamm, Herr. Danke dir, Jesus, Herr, dass du ans Kreuz gegangen bist, Herr, dass du den Preis bezahlt hast, Herr, dass du dein kostbares Blut vergossen hast für uns, Herr. Danke, dass wir dafür Frieden in uns haben, Liebe in uns haben, Herr. Und wir bitten dich, Herr, auch für die kommende Woche, Herr, dass du uns segnest, dass die Worte, die wir empfangen haben von dir, dass die auch in uns wohnen, Herr. Dass wir da auch Wachstum bekommen, dass wir auch vielleicht darüber studieren, Herr, und nachdenken und nachsinnen, Herr, wer du bist und was du wirklich getan hast, Herr. Wir danken dir, Herr, für jeden Einzelnen, Herr. Und segne du uns, Herr, und sprich du auch zu uns, Herr. Leite und führe du uns, Herr. Und tröste du uns, wenn wir traurig sind, Herr. Ja, gib du uns, Herr, immer wieder neu diese Hoffnung. Erneuer du uns, Herr. Und danke, dass du für uns bist, Herr. In Jesu Namen beten wir.
Amen.
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 Okay, ihr seid entlassen. Gott segne euch, eure Woche.